We are just about 1 month away from the release of the new Tomb Raider 4 to 6 remasters, and I'm really excited about it. I was watching the trailer again, getting hyped up, but it made me think about vehicles in Tomb Raider, because obviously there are vehicles in Last Revelation and Chronicles. And then I was like, you know what? Let's do a tier list. I've actually gone ahead and took screenshots from every vehicle Lara uses in the Tomb Raider franchise, excluding the comic books, but we're talking movies, the anime, the animated series in 2007, we're going there. Because for better or worse in the Tomb Raider franchise, vehicles are kind of like death traps for Lara Croft. Your first impression is, oh, this could help me, and then soon you realize that this is probably going to kill her. We are going to rank these into several categories. From the top, we have actually knows how to drive, not amazingly, but just knows how to drive competently. We got there in the end. Rocky, traversing, but we got there. Product placement, which I think is a unique one, because I can't think of too many video game franchises that has so much product placement when it comes to vehicles. Even in movies, the only brand I can think of is Bond, but Tomb Raider has a lot. Better off on foot, self-explanatory. Not covered by her insurance. I don't think her insurance company knows that she's using vehicles in this way, and probably would frown upon it. Cutscene and QTE hazard. I actually think these are relatively safe until you get to a cutscene, in which case it's like Final Destination. Does she even have a license? These are the vehicles you have to question. Does she actually have training? Has she even taken a lesson with the specific vehicle? And the special category goes to kayak, which is bloody hell. It speaks for itself. It's the kayak from Tomb Raider 3 on the South Pacific Islands. I'm actually deciding though at this very moment, is that exclusively just going to be for the kayak, or are we going to include other awful iconic vehicles and put them in there? There's like 70 vehicles here that we have to go through, so let's jump in. We are going to kick things off with the elevator and blowtorch from the Tomb Raider 1 FMV. Not a vehicle in the traditional sense. This is, you know, an elevator shaft, but she uses it like a vehicle to get from point A to point B. And it's such a unique way of transport. I'm going to give it, we got there in the end, because I feel like this was very improvised on her behalf, although she did come with a blowtorch, so that's not in her usual backpack. Or maybe she went for not covered by her insurance. Next we have Lara Croft's iconic Norton Street Fighter motorbike, which I'm going to put in. It's going to be a very long video because there's so many vehicles, so I have to think quickly. I actually think she knows how to drive this. She knew how to use the Norton bike to get onto Natala's boat. So I'm going to put that in actually knows how to drive, even though it probably would be not covered by her insurance. But I'm going to go for knows how to drive. Then Natala's yacht, which she escapes the game from. We got there in the end, because I'm metaphorically talking about the journey of Tomb Raider 1. With those games, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, so we got there in the end because that's how you conclude the game. Next, we're moving on to Tomb Raider 2. This was quite a revolutionary game for video games back in the 90s, because this was the first entry where there were vehicles for Lara to use in-game, and there weren't actually a lot of games in that era, the 32-bit era, that had vehicles in a game where it wasn't like in a dedicated level. Like in Crash Bandicoot 3, you can ride a tiger on a dedicated Great Wall of China section, or you had games like Driver 2, which were primarily driving, but you could get out of the car to do a couple of things. But in Tomb Raider 2, they could do a lot, and there was no loading screen. It was all seamless when you loaded into that level. That was a really big deal back then. We're kicking off with the iconic boat from Venice, and I'm going to put the first one, because there's two, I'm going to put the first one into we got there in the end. No, actually, she knows how to drive it, because you actually have to jump off at the last second, otherwise you'll blow up, because there's like some protective bombs that's guarding the entrance to Marco Bartoli's hideout. So Lara kind of has to sacrifice the boat, jump off really quickly and save herself. But then there's this second boat where you have to run into the entrance, you pull a lever, it's timed, the clock goes off, and I'm going to go for we got there in the end. So even though this has the cool movie moment, this is probably one of the first ever set pieces in an action adventure video game, especially from the 32-bit era. A lot of people think Uncharted invented these kind of cinematic movie moments, but they were actually there since Tomb Raider 2. But when I was playing those games, I was getting diamond achievements all the time on the Xbox just for beating the first few levels, so I think the completion rate of these games aren't good, and that's why I don't think people really remember those moments. But that was like a James Bond movie moment, and I believe even Heather Gibson, who created that level, talked about she wanted like this Bond movie moment, and to me it is one of the most iconic parts of Tomb Raider 2. The next vehicle we have is this underwater submarine, and this is in an FMV. Lara uses this to get to wreck the Meridian, but the guy driving it crashes into a wall and gets surrounded by sharks, and then you quickly have to swim into the wreck of the ship and find an air pocket. I think that's our first cutscene in QTE Hazard, because I think if Lara didn't distract the person driving the ship, I don't think he would have crashed into the wall. Next we have this water balloon, also from the Tomb Raider 2 FMV sequence, and she makes her way back up using this air balloon, which I'm assuming she had in her backpack. And I'm going to put this in actually knows how to drive, because I have her back, and as we get to the water sections in other games, she's not going to rank very well, so I want to give her one underwater vehicle that she actually knows how to use, and she seemed like she could use the balloon, so I'm going to give that and actually knows how to drive. Ooh, then we have the plane that she commandeers, and she drives it from the middle of the ocean to Tibet without ever needing gas. Eventually though, when she drives high altitude, the plane freezes up and eventually explodes, and she has to escape at a parachute. It's either we got there in the end, or does she even have a license? There was never anything in the lore that she could drive a plane, and she never seemed interested in driving a plane. But if she knew how to drive a plane, she would have realized driving at that altitude in the Tibet mountains wasn't a great idea. So I'm going to put that in, does she even have a license? Because I think if she knew how to drive a plane, she would have known about the risks of going to Tibet. This is our first ski-doo. This is a ski mobile that you can get into Tibetan mountains right after she crashes that plane. I'm going to put the ski-doo in not covered by her insurance, because I don't think they're supposed to defy gravity the way she drives them into Tibetan mountains. You're driving over a lot of cliffs in the air. But in that same level, you then swap ski-doos, because you come across this one that has machine guns on it, and because it involves machine guns and killing things, I'm going to put that straight up to actually knows how to drive, because if there's one thing Lara Croft is good at, it is killing things. The next vehicle is another FMV one, and it's this Jeep she uses. She steals it from Marco Baitoli's henchmen, and she uses it to go from Tibet to China, and I think I'm just going to put that in actually knows how to drive. I was going to say we got there in the end, but then I realized she does use her rear mirror to look at the people chasing her from behind. That's the one time she ever demonstrated she actually learned the rules of the road. So I'm going to put that in actually knows how to drive, because I think we do need to give her credit when she actually does check her mirrors. We actually have some more ski-doos from Tomb Raider 2 Golden Mask, and I have played that for the first time this year with the remasters, so I can say for the first level I'm going to put that in better off on foot, because there were so many times where I got in trouble because of the ski-doo and nearly died with it, so I think she would have been better off on foot there in Alaska. And likewise for the second Alaska level, I'm going to put that in. I think I'm going to do the same for the second level, although it was kind of a bit more useful. Maybe we got there in the end. It was harder in the first level, because I was always being chased by boulders with it. Then we get to Tomb Raider 3, and we start off strong with Lara Croft's mansion with her assault course for the quad bike, which I think I'm going to put in knows how to drive, just because she built out an actual training ground for it. One of my favorite things about the character of Lara Croft is the dichotomy that she comes from old money, but she actually spends like new money. She tears down her historic hedge maze and changes it out to an assault course. She completely destroys her ballroom in her mansion and tears it out for a gym. If that doesn't scream new money, I don't know what is, and I actually love that about it, because in the original biography of the games, her family abandons her and she has to make her own money, so she does it by writing books. So I love this idea that even though she comes from old money and is an aristocrat, she has the behavior of new money. And I think it makes sense, because the game developers who'd made Tomb Raider at the time, in the 90s, game developers are actually getting royalties back then. They were getting back-end payments for their games if they did well. So from the interviews, we know that a lot of the parking lot of that game studio was filled full of sports cars, because people were becoming rich overnight from the games. So I love the idea that because they were new rich, they were making her spend new rich money, which I think is just so funny. But it's not all fun and games for the quad bike, because all of a sudden she has to use it in India, and it is so tough to use in India that you're better off on foot. The River Ganges is actually a non-linear level. There's two routes. There's what you can do by foot, there's what you can do by quad bike. You need to do the quad bike route to get all secrets, but the easier way is to go on foot. So that is literally the definition of better off on foot. And things don't get better for her insurance, because in Nevada she infamously, so this is canon, crashes her quad bike, becomes unconscious, and gets caught by military police trying to invade Area 51. So I'm going to put that either in cutscene and QTE hazard, or does she even have a license? I'm tempted for the story, for the lore, that it goes from you think she has a license because she built out a quad bike track to actually it's all off the books. I don't even think she has a license. After that, we get to London. This is the train that you actually have to pull. I'm not talking about the underground train you can get hit by. I'm talking about the one you have to use to move from one area to the other. So you climb onto a train, pull the lever, and it kind of yeets you across the London Underground of Aldwych, which is this abandoned tube station in London. So I'm going to go for we got there in the end because I think it was very rudimentary. Now, the freaking underwater proposition vehicle. I am so tempted to put this in kayak because it is awful to control. You also have a breath meter because you're underwater. Will she run out of oxygen? Will she drown? And you're also exploring dark underground caves with this poorly controlled vehicle. I would say better off on foot, but she doesn't swim fast enough. You actually have to use it. So I'm going to go for, ironically enough, I don't think the first entry to kayak will be the kayak. I think I'm going to put the underwater proposition vehicle because I actually had more issues with that in the remaster playthrough than I actually did with the kayak. Speaking of kayak, we also now have the kayak from Madubu Gorge in the South Pacific Islands. This was the category it was designed for. This is, if I was to rank them within the category, the kayak takes the cake. This thing is just awful. She's not better off on foot because if she falls into the water, she'll drown because it's rapid water. But this is just, it just doesn't move the way you would ever think it would move. I actually read an interview that the game developers said they did that on purpose because they wanted it to seem like, you know, you're actually in the kayak and how tough it was to move a kayak. But I don't know. That was just really bad. If you've never played Tomb Raider 3 before and you've never seen the kayak, just watch people play the kayak in action. It is something else to see. You can watch me play the kayak. Fortunately, after we collect all pieces of the meteorite, we have to go to Antarctica and we find this little dinghy boat hanging off of a ship, and I'm going to go put that in. We got there in the end because you can't swim in the water, she'll freeze to death, unlike in Tibet. But because the dinghy is probably using the same programming as the boat from Venice, it's actually pretty easy to control, so I'm going to go for we got there in the end. Actually, I've never had an issue with that dinghy. Maybe she actually knows how to drive it. Then we have the minecart from Oryx Tech Mines. This is giving, right, so I never felt that Lara Croft was anything like Indiana Jones because it's an easy comparison to make, but I think it's so important that when we look at creative arts, we have to look at the art that inspired the people who actually created it and what their inspirations was. And for Lara Croft, there was so many things from John Woo movies to Alien to Aeon Flux. This is like when they started hiring people who were clearly fans of Indiana Jones and were just ripping off Indiana Jones, because there's no question about it that this minecart is from Indiana Jones. And I'm going to put this in. It's not that it's hard, but you just never know what's around the corner. Are you going to fall into a pit? Are you going to keel over? I'm going to say better off on foot. Unfortunately, you can't. You have to use it. But if you could go on foot, and I think she could have went on foot if she had a bit of patience, I would have said better off on foot. Then this is a really controversial moment, believe it or not. This is the helicopter Lara escapes Antarctica from the end of Tomb Raider 3 with. And this is really controversial because in it, she shoots what appears to be an innocent guy. He doesn't seem like a threat to her. She smiles, pulls out a gun and shoots him. And this is what actually started the debate in the Tomb Raider fandom if Lara Croft is actually a psychopath. And this gained so much momentum that when Alicia Vikander did the Wired autocomplete interview for her press run of Tomb Raider, one of the Google searches she was met with was,
is Lara Croft a psychopath? This is giving me a lot more inspiration if I ever get to play this character again.
And I think that's so funny because people in the fandom still have conversations to this day. Is she a psychopath? The guy was working for Willard. I mean, maybe he was a contractor, but I think she was kind of right to kill him. But more importantly, I think that's a better way we should be talking about the character of Lara Croft. I think she is morally grey, and I think having those conversations is far more interesting than anything that maybe they've attempted to do with the newer iterations, although I'm trying to be really, really cool here and chill about it. Everybody's welcome to watch this video. I don't really want strong hot takes about Tomb Raider in this video. We're just here to celebrate all the vehicles. She is able to dodge some missiles from it, actually, in the context. So maybe she actually knows how to drive that helicopter. Then we get to Tomb Raider 3 and the Lost Artifact. This is in Shakespeare's Cliff, which is off the cliffs of Dover. This is a really cool moment where Lara Croft on her quad bike actually drives over the Eurotunnel, the train that goes from England to France, and you drive over it. I think that's really fun. I'm going to put that quad bike in. We got there in the end. I actually think the quad bike works better in Shakespeare's Cliff than it does in India. This is a dinghy boat from the end of Sleeping with the Fishes, and I'm going to put this in Does She Even Have a License? Because she used it to drive from basically England to France. And when you start the France level, you can actually see that the dinghy boat crashed. So I just don't understand how she crashed the boat. So I'm actually going to put that one in Does She Even Have a License? Because I don't know the practicalities of using a small fuel tank boat to go from England to France. We're taking a bit of a break from the games because next up is when Lara Croft was once upon a time a spokesperson for the Spanish car company Seat. The Spanish car company hired a fictional British woman to do some commercials in France, of all places. Now you might be thinking this is where product placement comes in, but oh no honey, no. These are the two cars I picked to highlight the commercials because they are going straight into not covered by her insurance. I think it's pretty well known that Seat makes budget cars, and this car here definitely does not have four-wheel drive. It had no business driving on ice, escaping all those men. And neither did this tiny seat Ibiza car, which she uses to drive over a cliff and once again defy gravity. I don't know why Seat didn't think, does this concept actually work? Because no one's car insurance would cover any of those situations. And I don't think anyone would trust a Seat car for any of those situations. Next, we're getting to Tomb Raider: The Last Revelation. And this one's pretty exciting to think about because this is obviously with the remasters coming out next month. We begin with the Jeep, and you can actually drive this. You drive across KV5. It's pretty epic that you get to drive her Jeep, but when I think about the Jeep and how you control it, I'm going to say the Jeep goes in... Part of me says better off on foot because you're always getting in and out of it to collect secrets. I'm going to go for not covered by her insurance because there's this moment in an FMV where a guy points a rocket launcher at her and she just drives straight for it, and I'm like, I don't think her car insurance covers that. But it's a great moment for Land Rover. Although maybe that's underselling what she accomplished. Maybe we should go for we got there in the end because she survived that. The next vehicle is really cool. It's an Egyptian train, and the level itself takes place entirely on the train, and you're platforming around, the train's moving, and you're on your way to Alexandria, and if you fall off obviously you die, and it's just really cool. I'm gonna put that in we got there in the end. Although there is this moment where you have to uncouple and detach a train car, so I was going to put it in Does She Even Have a License? Because I feel like you probably need an engineering degree to do that. But it's literally just a means to the end because she needs to get to Alexandria, so I'm going to put that in we got there at the end. Then we have a motorbike from Tomb Raider: The Last Revelation, and this is a really iconic motorbike because it has a sidecar on it, and Lara gets a lot of usage out of this sidecar. She helps a resistance fighter by carrying him onto the sidecar to move him away from an enemy. That could actually get really political coming out next month because of what's going on in the world. I mean, she's helping a freedom fighter. If you know, you know. But what I remember most is there's actually a moment in the level where you have to fill the motorbike up with fuel to cross a bigger gap. You're kind of like putting adrenaline into it so you can cross a bigger jump. So just because Lara Croft knows how to actually work the motorbike and she basically fills it up with petrol, I think that has to go straight in actually knows how to drive. Next up is Tomb Raider Chronicles, where we're back to vehicles in FMV, and we're starting off with this cute little Vespa in Italy. She uses it to escape from Pierre and Larson, and I'm going to put that in got there in the end because she doesn't want to get hit by them in the car, and she eventually trashes it, so we got there in the end. There's actually some really nice movie references in that FMV. There's posters for both Rebecca and Casablanca, so the people at core, or at least the artists who met that FMV, were obviously really big cinephiles. Next vehicle is an underwater suit that Lara has to wear in the Russian section, but I'm calling it vehicle because there's motors on it, and you have to find the Spear of Destiny. I'm going to say not covered by her insurance because she does get dinged by it, and there's an air puncture hole, and you quickly have to make your way back to the sinking ship before she runs out of oxygen, and I'm thinking that was not covered by her insurance. The next image is a young 16-year-old Lara Croft and father what's-his-face. I'm Irish, and this takes place in a fictional Irish island called Canusie, which I believe is, we have these three little islands off in Connacht, so in Connacht and Canusie is what they were going for. And earlier when I was talking about, you have to see what inspired the artists who worked on this game, this section was actually inspired by an artist who loved the adventures of Tintin. And so that's why when you look at the artistry of the Irish sections, which I actually love in Tiermaker Chronicles, and I'm really excited to see in the remasters, it is definitely giving off Tintin. Is she even driving it? Should I have even included this image? I'm going to put that boat in We Got There in the End, because her and Father Finnegan, that was his name. Next vehicle was when Lara Croft was in New York to steal back the iris from her mentor Runner Von Croy, and she's using this Batman style glider, and this is going straight into does she even have a license, because she fails. When she lands on the rooftop, she accidentally falls over, and even her sidekick Zip is like, what's going on? So the game developers lightly made fun of her. She's not a Mary Sue, she does make mistakes, and that's going straight to does she even have a license? The next vehicle I can remember canonically is the underwater vehicle from Tomb Raider Curse of the Sword for the Game Boy Color. I don't remember if there was a vehicle in the first Tomb Raider game for Game Boy, because I did not have that growing up. I had Curse of the Sword. There was definitely this in the underwater section, and it wasn't hard actually. You would think underwater on a Game Boy Color controller layout would be terrible. Not so bad. I'm going to put that straight into We Got There in the End, because that didn't seem too difficult to me actually, when I think back. Then it's 2001. Oscar winner Angelina Jolie obviously plays Lara Croft in the first Tomb Raider movie, and we actually start off with this Aston Martin car that she uses to drive to Powell's office. I don't have a screenshot of it driving to the office, but I have a screenshot of it in her manor, and I'm putting that straight into product placement. This is where Lara Croft's journey into product placement begins, and it's with this Aston Martin car. When the people break into Lara Croft's mansion for the timepiece thingy, Lara does use a skateboard. I couldn't get a good screenshot of it, so instead I'm using this picture of a Tomb Raider merchandise skateboard that I actually had growing up. I bought it, and my parents bought it for me in Smith's. I don't know where that skateboard is anymore. Apparently it's worth a mint, so I hope we kept it. It's probably in our shed somewhere. And I'm going to put that skateboard in actually knows how to drive, because she was really good on it. Likewise, while they did use a lot of pictures of Angelina Jolie on a motorbike for the promotion of the film, she never got to use the motorbike outside of her house sequence, but she looked damn good on it. And that's going straight into actually knows how to drive, because that was massive slayage. This Range Rover she uses in Cambodia was actually made for the film, so no question about it. This is going straight into product placement. She looks cool in it, but I do question using an open style Jeep in places with snakes, and that was behind the scenes gossip that she was constantly getting like snakes shucking off her because they kept landing in from the top. So it wasn't practical enough. They picked that unique design for product placement reasons. But one thing that I have to put in actually knows how to drive, and I say that's bad because it's an animal, but are the Siberian Huskies as she escapes that temple at the end of the first film. Those movies aren't amazing, but that is so Tomb Raider, and that is one of the creative decisions that film made that is actually so Lara Croft. I think lately sometimes you've been seeing people make creative decisions where you question, is that Lara Croft? This is so Lara Croft. And it's one of those moments where whether you're a guy or a girl, in that moment you want to be Lara Croft. And that's what we should be rooting for with the character, is creating moments for that character where regardless of who you are, you're like, that's cool, I want to be her. Typically it's always been said, women want to be her, guys want to date her. But actually what we need to be striving for are those moments where it doesn't matter who you are, you want to be Lara Croft. And escaping that crumbling tomb on some huskies is just so cool and so much fun, and she looks amazing doing it. I just love that scene so much. The next game is Tomb Raider The Angel of Darkness, which of course is the controversial PS2 game, but it might be a blind spot for me because I purposely decided not to look up anything of that game beyond my memory, because I really want to go into that game again next month with an open mind and not remember it, and it's been about 10 years since I played it. The only car I remember is the one that Bouchard invites Lara into when she goes back to Werner von Croy's apartment, which obviously does not end well for her because he sends in the cleaner to try assassinate her. But it's giving personal driver. I think Lara saw it and was like, personal driver, back to my lap of luxury. I think she was too trusting, so I'm gonna go for... It is giving cutscene and QT hazard because Bouchard does put his hand on her lap, and that was a bit weird. This is the Tomb Raider Visa card commercial, which came out around the time of Angel of Darkness and actually starred Sofia Vergara from Modern Family. And in the CGI, Lara Croft once again crashes a boat, so I'm gonna put that straight into cutscene and QTE hazard. There's actually a lot more vehicles in the second movie, The Cradle of Life, with Angelina Jolie, so we have a lot to get through. We're first going to start off with this ski mobile she rides around outside of Greece to show off. I think she's supposed to be doing reconnaissance, but it looks like she's just doing a bunch of jet ski sports. I'm gonna put that in not covered by her insurance. I don't think Lara's holiday travel cover is that comprehensive. Next thing is the underwater propeller vehicle she drives, and unlike the one from Tomb Raider 3, Angelina Jolie certainly knows how to drive it, so that one is going straight into actually knows how to drive. And then there's the infamous shark. After her UPV gets punctured by the baddies, she has to escape using creative means. And by creative, I mean a shark that she punches in the nose. She kind of owned that moment, so I think that has to go to, we got there in the end. That shark was an ends to a means. She had to swim up, and that shark was going to swim faster than her arms could do this. Next vehicle, and I feel bad saying that because it's an animal, but it's the horse she rides on her assault course, and that was such a cool scene. We really need more of that in Tomb Raider overall as they develop the next game. Like, we really need some more of this. Again, the films did that. They probably haven't even played a bloody game, and still they got the concept, or at least Angelina Jolie did. I'm gonna put that in actually knows how to drive. I feel bad, it's a horse, but she looked damn good on it. This was actually hard to find footage of, but does anyone remember when she first goes into China, they actually use like a stealth aircraft to go in from the sky, and they actually destroy it. But from what I was reading online, it's a fictional vehicle, but apparently it's like supposed to be like a stealth craft from like World War II or something. So I think you're not supposed to intentionally land it. Because it is a fictional vehicle, I'm like, they could have landed it. Also, they were going from outer space, so I think I have to put that straight into, does she even have a license? What was that about? Why was Lara Croft traveling into that country from outer space? Speaking of China, she does drive her motorbike on the Great Wall, and that is definitely not covered by her insurance because the Great Wall is a protected area. You should not be driving a motorbike on that. Likewise, when she's in Hong Kong, she has to jump off a building and she uses like these air parachutes, and she just finds them on the fly and they improvise, so that's going straight into, does she even have a license? When Lara goes to Africa, Range Rover did not sponsor this film. Instead, Jeep did, and that's the beginning of their sponsorship, which is more. So this Jeep Rubicon goes straight into product placement. When Crystal Dynamics takes over the franchise in 2006, we see a lot more brand partnerships, and one of them is Ducati for motorbikes. I have several motorbike sequences from Tomb Raider Legend, but for the Peru section, I thought she was pretty good on the motorbike, so I'm going to put that into actually knows how to drive in the Peru section. Jeep continues their sponsorship from Cradle of Life to Tomb Raider Legend, and there's this Jeep Rubicon in yellow, and that is definitely going straight into product placement because it feels like that cutscene was intentional to show off the yellow Jeep that Anya is driving. Lara then finds another Ducati motorbike in like this showroom area in Tokyo, and there's a QTE that follows shortly after, and if you mess up that QTE, Lara dies in a very embarrassing way. So that goes straight into cutscene and QTE hazard. QTE, by the way, stands for Quick Time Event. Lara hops on another Ducati motorbike in Kazakhstan, however this time she's driving on snow and ice. So unlike the section in Peru, this one is going straight into not covered by her insurance because I don't know how that motorbike had grip on the weather conditions she was driving in. Lara finds herself on top of another train also in Kazakhstan, and this one is going straight into cutscene and QTE hazard because it probably is the funniest QuickTime event fail in all of the Tomb Raider franchise. Although this one's quite funny too, so when you go to King Arthur's place in England, you can use like a warehouse driving forklift, and if you fail that QuickTime event up, that's also most certainly a cutscene and QuickTime event hazard. Avalon. Oof. That's the whole raison d'etre of the trilogy of the first Crystal Dynamics games, the Mystery of Avalon. Honestly, I'm going between Better Off on Foot, I think we could have got to Avalon another way, or putting it in Kayak, because again, it is the whole raison d'etre of the three games. She uses King Arthur's sword to make a teleportation connection between Avalon with these mystical transportation devices, which is why it's a vehicle. I think that was a lot of hassle to collect all pieces of King Arthur's sword for that to fail on us. And in Tomb Raider Underworld, we get there in another means. So in fact, I'm putting this in Better Off on Foot for Avalon. Next, we're doing Crystal Dynamics' Tomb Raider Anniversary, which is one of my favorite Tomb Raider games. I think I have it ranked Tomb Raider 2, Rise of the Tomb Raider Anniversary. It's definitely my favorite of the LAU trilogy. And you would think because it's a remake, is it going to get the same rankings as the first game? No. This time around, when Lara's breaking into Natha's office, she doesn't bring a blowtorch, she just uses her pistol. It's giving she's done this before because she does a cool flip, like she was ready for the velocity, so that's going straight into actually knows how to drive. And I have to say, she looked damn cool on the motorbike, and because Ducati is still sponsoring them at this point, it's not a Northern Street Fighter, it is a Ducati, but I will put it in knows how to drive. She was great in Anniversary. Natla's yacht. This is interesting because this is the LAU trilogy, and because Natla never paid Lara for her services because she was evil, in my headcanon Lara steals Natla's yacht, and it's the same yacht in Tomb Raider Underworld. So I'm putting this in not covered by her insurance because I don't think her insurance company knows she owns the yacht because she stole Natla's. 2007 we also had a revisioned Tomb Raider animated series starring Minnie Driver, and I haven't watched those in years, but I remember there was some cool vehicles. So we have this glider here. I don't remember anything embarrassing happening. So I think this is just going to go into, does she even have a license? And her glider was definitely not covered by insurance. You start Tomb Raider Underworld off in the middle of the ocean in her yacht, and what I find really interesting is this picture where she's in water battling some sharks with her spear gun, but behind her is her yacht. Why didn't she just stand on the yacht and shoot the sharks from there? I feel like this image sums up the usefulness of Natla's yacht, which I feel, again, headcanon, she stole from Anniversary. But she should be just standing on the yacht and shooting with her spear gun there. So I'm going to put that better off on foot because that was pointless. In Mexico and some other areas, you get to drive your motorbike again. And this time around, the motorbike is a lot more free. In Tomb Raider Legend, it was very structured in these specific sections. But in Underworld, you could drive it kind of like how you could drive them in classic games. However, it's a little janky. And it's kind of janky in the canon because as Lara enters a Mexican tomb, she nearly curls over into a spike of pits. She stops herself just in time, so I'm going to give her credit for that. But it makes you wonder, was she just better off going into that tomb on foot? So I'm going for better off on foot. Unfortunately, Lara doesn't drive anything in the rebooted games because it takes place on Yamatai on the Endurance ship, but she wasn't responsible for that. She wasn't driving it. And there's no vehicles in Rise of the Tomb Raider either. So the next time we see Lara in a vehicle after 2008 is 10 years later exactly with Alicia Vikander in the Tomb Raider movie reboot. I really enjoyed the bicycle scenes. I think Lara as a kind of a lone food delivery bike courier made a lot more sense than her working in a bar. In 2013 games, she mentions that she works at the Nine Bells, and that's how she learned to do first aid to Conrad Roth, which I guess makes sense in the name of the game, but Lara's not really extroverted, she's introverted. This change makes more sense to me. So it was really funny when the movie came out, people were like, why is Lara cycling as a bike courier? And I was like, what, did you think it was better when she was, working in a bar? When was Lara working in a bar? She mentions it in the game. Like, you can tell when someone's a Tomb Raider tourist versus when they've actually really played the games. But honestly, I think the note behind the note, which is something that I get told a lot because I work in film and TV, is that nobody likes Lara Croft cosplaying as a poor person. That did not go over well. I think you got away with it in the game, but in the movie it was just too apparent. But just say Lara does work as a delivery driver. I'm guessing that what she does on that bicycle, being chased around for a fox hunt, is definitely not covered by her insurance. This one kind of sucks because all we have is behind the scenes footage, but Alicia Vikander was originally going to have a motorbike at the end of the film, and she looks damn cool on it. So we're putting that up in actually knows how to drive. But those scenes were deleted and we never got them onto DVD either. And in the final version was replaced with a Volvo XC40. Now, in fairness, the product placement worked. If I had money, I'd buy a Volvo. I'm like, oh, a city Jeep, that's actually a really great idea. But is Lara a Volvo girl? I think that's going straight into product placement. The start of the third rebooted game, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, does start with a plane crash that Lara's on, so you're immediately thinking she's responsible for it. However, to Lara's credit, she did hire a pilot, and it was only after he died she tried to commandeer the plane. That did not work out, so she knew to eventually put on her seatbelt, so I'm going to put that in cutscene and QTE hazard. Also, I do think it's really funny because I come from the world of film. Sometimes creatives in my industry can look at games and be like, there's nothing there. But I think it's so funny because the scene of Lara waking up in the jungle attached to the plane and having to drop down into the mud, the people who made Jurassic World Dominion definitely played Shadow of the Tomb Raider, because the scene with Bryce Dallas Howard on that plane and she drops into the mud, but then they add a dinosaur, definitely inspired by Shadow of the Tomb Raider, 100%. The next batch of vehicles we have are from the Tomb Raider anime on Netflix, and I don't recall the exact order. I had took these stills from the trailer. You cannot take pictures on the Netflix app. And just to be super respectful, look, I didn't bother going back in to check the order. Just being, I think, I had to be so careful with my words because it's a small industry. And people, we work so hard on these projects. Like, we all work so hard. But anyway, I think she crashes the car, doesn't she? Or does she even have a license? I think the bicycle, sure, she fails, so she's probably better off on foot. The boat, does she even have a license? Skydiving was cool. I don't think she face planted that, so I'm going to put that in. We got there in the end. She looked cool doing that. I don't think she crashed the bike. I think that was intentional to get onto the train, wasn't it? So I guess I'll put that in. We got there in the end. These are my rankings of over 70 vehicles from the Tomb Raider franchise. I'm going to put a link in the description to this Tiermaker. You can do your own. Drop a comment down below and let me know what your thoughts are about the vehicles that Lara traverses on. Do you have any specific or fond memories or some horror memories? If I've missed any vehicles from the franchise, then it's definitely a traumatic memory that I've just blocked out of my head. Because as I mentioned before, a lot of these are death traps. I'm really excited about the new Tomb Raider 4 to 6 remasters. I will definitely be playing them next month for my channel. I'll be doing it on the PlayStation 5 this year because I got the PS5 Pro. We'll see if there's any new features for that. But yeah, Tomb Raider 4 to 6 is going to be really exciting, and a lot of vehicles I featured in this tier list we'll be seeing in the remaster, and we'll see how they translate. Maybe with the modern controls they'll work better. And I'm definitely excited to give Tomb Raider The Angel of Darkness a fair shake. It would have been really easy for me to make a video beforehand being like, does Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness all about? But I purposely decided not to play it. I want to play it for the first time with the remasters in over, nearly 10 years and just give it a really fair shot for the story, for the characters, for the tone. It's going to be really fun. If you enjoyed watching me do this tier list, do let me know in the comments, give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to stay tuned for more Tomb Raider content I will do to 4 to 6 remasters. I hope you're all keeping safe and well and are having a wonderful start to 2025, and I will see you all soon. Bye everybody.